saw a hummingbird. How many of you like hummingbirds? And Pato, I got good news. The hummingbird was singing. I didn't hear the Ubuntu, but I heard the mmm. Didn't they do a great job last night? You know, there's just so much gratitude, and I was sitting there reflecting. 5 generations ago, my great-great-grandfather, William Henry Jameson, got into a wagon with his family in St. Louis and joined a wagon train and moved across the plains, not quite knowing where they were going, and wound up in California, started a township called Corona with another family called the Joy family, which gives me joy to know that Joy is part of my family heritage. In fact, the Joys were in Boston, and the Joys and the Jamesons in Boston in 1850 were selling pianos to the South and bringing back crates with slaves. And they were accused in the 1850s of having too many African Americans in the Tremont Temple where they served. So I feel a little bit like we're in a wagon train. And I was tearing up a little bit as I was thinking about each and all of you. Some of you I've known for decades. Some of you I just met here, and you're my new best friends. And what a wagon train it is. I mean, the incredible talent on this wagon train. Is it over the top? Yeah. So I give thanks for each and every one of you. I give thanks for Trudy and Mike. I give thanks for Tim. I give thanks for Michael and Joy for welcoming us here to this beautiful space. And I don't know, did everybody get a little card under your door this morning? Now that's class. So let's begin with just a moment of prayer, because we gave thanks for Charles and Myrtle, but I think there's some more people we want to give thanks to and some more beings. So if you just take a deep breath, breathe out deeply, breathe in love, breathe out peace. So Heavenly Father and Divine Mother, angels and unseen friends, here we are gathered with you and in you. And our hearts are bursting with joy. They're bursting with a new quality of inspiration as we leave this place. They're bursting with a new appreciation of the community that is growing around this revelation. When we see our brother Collins from Ghana, when we see the work that Panto and Antoinette are doing across the face of the globe with the message of Ubuntu, when we see the incredible work of the fellowship, of the UAI, of UUI, and of I and you, we give thanks. And we give thanks for Charles and Myrtle, for their vision, for their inspiration. We give thanks for Dr. William S. Sadler and Lena, and for their inspiration. But we want to go back a little further. We want to give thanks for the Osage, for the Fox peoples, for the Shawnee peoples, and all the tribes of this area. For we are walking upon their ground. And we walk lightly upon Grandmother Earth, for it is she who supports us. And so we ask you to teach us the wisdom of indigenous peoples, that we may walk a little lighter upon this planet. And we go back even further to the four-footed ones, and we give thanks for the buffalo and for the fox and the deer, and for all the four-footed creatures that walked upon this land, who have sustained us and nourished us and inspired us. And we go back a little further, and we give thanks for the life carriers who brought life to this planet, inspired by the creative Mother Spirit, filling the seas with that life, that plasm that eventually became us. We look back upon the long trail and we feel responsibility for honoring that trail and all who have walked upon it. And we ask your healing and your blessing and your guidance upon each and all of us, those who have preceded us and those who will go before us in the future. Amen. So, where's Alice? Is Alice here? She's gone. Well, in the spirit of Alice, I want to ask you all to pull out a pencil or a pen if you have it. If you don't have it, look to your neighbor, maybe you'll get one. But she told us to write. So I'm going to honor Alice. So what I'm here today to share with you and talk to you about, when I was asked to talk about how Jesus taught, is not so much about methods and techniques, but about the real source of education, which is our very being. And as you have been seeing on the quote, I love this quote, the world needs to see Jesus living again in the lives of spirit-born mortals. And guess who that is? That's you. And so I'm going to suggest to you this morning, I'm going to invite you to amp it, because the world's in trouble. And it needs more spirit-born mortals to incarnate the values of truth, beauty, goodness, and I'm looking at my brother Tom, unconditional love. So Jesus' teaching was a function of his being. And this morning, you're all going to get an MBA. How many of you already have an MBA? Okay. I like education, so I kept going to school. I got the MBA, the CPA, the CMA, the CIA, the CFP, and finally my father said, time out. What about the JOB? And so I said, yeah, Dad, I think I'm ready. What I want to say is that really what attracted people to Jesus and his teachings was Jesus. And I've been on the trail long enough. I like to tell the story. I'm a little bit, my totem animal, Bobby and Carol know this, my totem animal is the sloth. So you've all heard the story of the sloth who was mugged by two turtles. They came to take a police report, and the sloth turned to the policeman. He said, you know, it happened so fast. So I've been at this for 52 years, and I'm just now starting to get it. And what I'm starting to get, as Marilyn so beautifully pointed out in her presentation and Mike in his presentation, that this life is about the pursuit of wisdom, it's about the realization of selfhood, and it's about the attainment of spiritual values. I'm looking at the vitamin makers over there. And I'm going to ask you a question now. Which adjutant precedes the spirit of wisdom? So, as I often say, and if my brother Richard Keeler were here, he would say it again, Gard. If God were to knock on your door this morning and say, hey, Bev, you got 20 minutes for me? Your answer would be? Yeah. Well, why not? And Jackie, I need another 20 minutes in the afternoon. Will you give me 20 minutes in the afternoon? Okay. So what we say, what I learned from my teacher, Thomas Keating, is is that once a day is maintenance, twice a day is improvement, and occasionally go on a spiritual vacation with God. So I was a CPA for 25 years, and I'd come back and they'd ask, well, how was your vacation, Gard? I said, fantastic. What'd you do? I said, I went on a silent retreat. You did what? So again, what I've discovered is that your journey is a journey of healing and transformation. And what I've discovered is that nobody I meet doesn't have trauma, doesn't have affliction. My Uncle Reeve Darling was the Handicapped Man of the Year in California. My Uncle Reeve Darling had cerebral palsy. He couldn't move anything, except he could move his mouth. He employed 26 people in a consulting business. We went to a Tai Chi workshop one time, and the Tai Chi master, Al Huang, some of you were in the retreat, and I shared this story. The Tai Chi master came over to Reeve, and he looked at him, and he said, "You do great Tai Chi." Because it's not so much what we do on the outside, it's what we're doing on the inside. How we're processing our trauma, how we're engaged with the quality of transformation. And this is what created, if you will, the foundation for Jesus' teaching. Now I want you, if you have your pen or pencil, to write kind of in a line, MBA. Because you're all walking out of this room with an MBA. MBA, M, motivation, B, spiritual being, A, attitude. So I just want to say, we serve Jesus and the creative Mother Spirit. We try to help out Gabriel and Father Melchizedek in our own ways. And we serve an incredible Creator Son. How many of you think we have an incredible Creator Son? And what I know, having been married for 42 years, is behind every good man is a better woman. So we haven't had much interaction, except through the Holy Spirit with the Creative Mother Spirit, but she's awesome. So I want to ask Trudy. Trudy, where are you? Come up here. So Alice was talking about ritual and the importance of ritual in relation to worship. And I want to, along with the Remembrance Supper, Pato, I want to institute a new ritual, which is welcoming our angels. Will you show us how we welcome our angels?
Okay.
As we did it this morning? What do you think? Invariably, I'm at trustee meetings, and Mo has us go around and have appreciations, and somebody appreciates Tamara, somebody appreciates Jerry, somebody appreciates this person, that person. And invariably, at the end of it, nobody's appreciated the angels and the midwares and the invisible beings in the room. And we appreciate them, don't we? So we serve an incredible being, Jesus. We serve the creative Mother Spirit. We work with all the beings below them to try to bring light and life to this distressed planet. And how lucky are we, right, Tom? We get to be Agandoners. I don't know about you, but I know Karen's in the room. I want to be a mighty messenger with my wife. How about you? Okay, Karen he started laughing, then he said absolutely. I just want to make sure we're clear on that, Tom. So the great news is all of this quality of being stems from the original family. And Marvin inspires me a lot when I think about this. This is a beautiful painting. How many of you have seen this painting? It's by a Russian artist named Rublev, and I've just got to go over here. And what we know is that the Father is love, the Son is mercy, compassion, and the Spirit is ministry and hope. And this icon, the art historians suggest that there's a mirror that was originally attached to the painting. The mirror is here, so when you would go up and you would look at this icon, you would see yourself at the table with the Trinity. So we're given a divine invitation. And there's Mike, my fellow philosophy professor. We're told that philosophy and poetry must intertwine a little bit. And so I love Hafiz. Hafiz says, you've been given a divine invitation. That boils your choices down to just two. You can come dressed for dancing, or you can be carried in by the pallbearers. Now, I want to know how many of you want to come dressed for dancing? And those of you that want to be carried in by the pallbearers, see me after the talk. So what we know is that the very heart of reality, the very heart of our own being, is love, compassion, and ministry. And where's my sister? Is Elizabeth still here? Is she gone? She left. So Elizabeth is, I don't know how many of you know this, but she's a Buddhist in background. And what we say in Buddhism is that Buddha nature is always with you, right? It's that wonderful cartoon of the evangelical walking down Park Avenue in New York City saying, repent, Christ is coming. If you don't repent, you're going to hell. And behind him, a little Buddhist Roshi with a little placard said, everything okay, Buddha here now. And what we know from the book is that Buddha is here now. That the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of truth, and the thought adjuster are here right now. And so the reality of love, mercy, and ministry are our reality. And I want to say, you can't get to ministry unless you go through mercy. Right, Tom? Unless you go through compassion. We'll talk a little bit later. I'm part of the Charter for Compassion. It's a worldwide movement. And it basically says, if you put compassion as the North Star, you're going to find port. So this is I think the motivating inspiration that should be of all of us, is how do we first of all experience love, and how do we move through compassion for everyone to ministry and hope? So the wonderful thing about Jesus is he doesn't mince words, right? And the book doesn't mince words. And so it's not do good things like your Father in heaven does good things. It's be you therefore perfect. So it's the B of the MBA that you're getting this morning. That's what we're focused on if we want to truly be teachers and ambassadors of this revelation. And so what are we doing each and every day to augment, to amplify the quality of beingness in our own lives? In the kingdom, you must be righteous in order to do the work. And part of doing the work is sharing the message. So we must be, and that requires, as we'll see a little bit later, the Beatitudes. You must be curious. I'm just so thrilled when I meet new people at this conference, which I've met many of you, not all of you. And my soul is inspired because I say, well, there's another wagon or two on the wagon train. Fantastic. Welcome. My friend and teacher, Thomas Keating, says this. Brother Keith, would you come up here and read this?
Thomas Keating. We are kept from the experience of spiritual being because our inner world is cluttered with past traumas and a faulty attitude. As we begin to clear away this clutter, the energy of divine light and love begins to flow through our being.
Isn't that great? So I get the privilege of teaching philosophy at UNLV, and I tell my students, this is like KUNLV, our local radio station. There's a constant downloading of love, of mercy, and of ministry. Constant downloading. The question is, are we receiving the download? And we say, is our body open to it? Where's Eric? Raise your hand, Eric. Where are you? Hey, Eric. If you haven't met Eric, Eric's doing incredible body work. You can find his stuff on YouTube. He showed us a thing or two and blessed all of us. But you got to be doing body work. And body work isn't just working out the wrinkles. It's also using the body. So during the 4 years of COVID, I had the privilege and honor of driving. Every week I would drive Meals on Wheels. And while I was driving, I spent a lot of time thinking about compassion and a lot of time thinking about how love is connected to ministry through compassion. I regard compassion as the linchpin between love and ministry. And there is, for all of us, a quality of healing. How many of you have taken your ACE score, Adverse Childhood Experiences? I encourage you to do so, because it will help you understand that we all have a quality of trauma. And then I encourage you to take your hope score to see how high your hope is. It's only 10 questions. The ACE is only 10 questions, but it's the best indicator of the outcome of a life unless there's intervention. And so a lot of us are walking around with pretty high ACE scores. My sister Susan and I do a lot of work with sexually trafficked individuals. They have about the highest ACE scores on the planet. And so you have to remember with every person you meet, there's trauma there. And so the only possible response, and this is one of the learning lessons I learned during the pandemic, the only possible response is compassion to every single person. And if you can't get there, then you need to go back to Rubla's mirror and remember that you're invited to the table. So I have the privilege of teaching Indian philosophy. How many know a little bit about India and India? And I tell my students, it's all encapsulated in this one word, which is Sat Chit Ananda. Sat means being or God, Chit means consciousness, and Ananda means joy, love, peace. And so I tell my students, you better get your chit together. So what we know is, and I believe the chakras are a pretty good roadmap to how the Father has implanted operating systems inside of us. And my favorite line in the Urantia book is actually page 1. How many of you resonate with these 9 words? In the minds of mortals, there is great confusion. Well, that's because if you're in Seattle and you work for Microsoft or you work for Apple, you're putting in one operating system. God put in 2 operating systems. The biological grounding of our evolutionary roots and our spiritual destiny operating system. 2 operating systems. Whoa, did he confuse us? But the book tells us if we begin to move the quality of our awareness up through the first 3, which are basically the biological operating system of security and survival, esteem and affection, power and control, or put in other ways, which we like to put in Las Vegas, where I'm from, money, sex, and fame. So it's really easy in Las Vegas to teach Indian philosophy, especially the concept of Maya. I take them all to the window and I say, you see that strip? You see all those hotels? Maya. It's all an illusion. We spent billions of dollars getting you, well, I'm sure none of you come to Las Vegas, getting you to come to Las Vegas to pursue those first 3 chakras, which all have basic instincts: self-preservation, self-reproduction, self-gratification, which is the header to the institutions of culture. And why are those the institutions of culture? Because we're operating out of the biological operating system. It's about time we started moving into the higher instinctual levels of love, creativity, wisdom, and pure bliss. How many of you are you in for that? Would you like to move up into the other operating system. I tell my students the first week of class, I say, you know, this is really a game show. You know, you paid a lot of money to be in my class, but it's really just a game show. There's door number 1, and there's door number 2. Door number 1 is fear, anxiety, and anger. Door number 2 is love, joy, and peace. And then I say, here's your first pop quiz. Stevie, do you want door number 2 or you want door number 1? 2. How many of you are in for 2? Those of you that want to stay in 1, see me after class. So Gandhi had what he called satyagraha, which was an experiment in truth. So I'm part of an experiment in truth. And over the last 14 years, we have trained over 300 nonprofit and public servants in the ways of compassion. We are Compassionate Las Vegas. You can look us up, compassionatelv.org, and you can see what we're attempting to do. And I'm proud to say that there's a lady over here. Her name is Isabel, and she is the niece of Susan Cook. I'm sad to say she's moving to Oklahoma. Well, you look up Isabel when she gets there, Tom. She's a jewel. But we believe that compassion is the North Star, but we don't just believe that. We believe that you can take compassion and you can move it into the field. So we have 5 issue areas that we are focused on: homelessness, the environment, education, mental health, and social justice. We have 140 acres where, when the new mayor comes in, I said, Mayor Shelley, I know you're going to be elected, but when you get in, I want to talk to you because I got 140 acres. I want to build tiny homes. I want to build a community. I want to give respect and dignity back to these people who are living on the street. Are you with me? She said, I'm with you. And we have some charter schools, and we have circles of trust in the charter schools. And if you're ever in Las Vegas in September, on Wednesday, 11 to 12, I want to take you to those charter schools, K through 8. They sit around in a little circle. They have a plush elephant or a plush seal, and they throw it around. It's their talking stick. And they're asked the question, what's on your heart today, Tom? Love. And they go around the circle and they share what's on their heart. And then they're asked, what are you grateful for, Jeff? No, the right answer is Susan. Good. I knew you were sloth. Join the tribe. So we have over 300 nonprofit leaders. There's over 500 communities from Karachi to Monterey to Rotterdam to Chicago to Las Vegas. Imagine that, Las Vegas. 500 communities that have adopted compassion as their North Star. I just want to give you perhaps a little seeding that you could make your own community, Jacksonville, Florida. You could make your own community a compassionate community. You could begin looking at some of these areas. You could begin helping to move. As Voltaire said, history is kind of interesting, but what's really interesting, right, Marilyn? Culture. When you change culture, you've changed everything. And if you look at the history of our planet, since the days of Adam and Eve, not much has changed. Would you all agree? We still got wars and rumors of wars. We still got so much going on. So we're attempting to create a culture shift, create a model of collective impact that will look at these issue areas and begin to drive change. And why? Because Jesus loved all of us. And sometimes we forget, living here in the US of A, sometimes we forget what's going on in the Sudan, what's going on in Ukraine, what's going on in Israel. I'm a coyote. I'm working with a father who's in Cairo trying to get 3 of his Palestinian daughters across the border. 3 have already been killed. I'm going to Monterey in September to meet his brother, Izzaldin Abalash, who's written an incredible book, I Shall Not Hate. And so whether you're Israeli or you're Palestinian, I'm going to quote the greatest of all philosophers, Chris Rock. That's not right. What happened at that music festival, that's not right. What's happening in Palestine right now, the displacement of Palestinian homes, that's not right. So I don't know how you are, but I'm a kind of, again, a sloth, a slow learner, but I think the answers are duh, right? Dave? They're kind of duh. Golden rule, right? Unless you win, I don't win, unless, right? It's a win-win. Always got to be a win-win. That's the golden rule. So what we say is when this quality of being emerges, there's a quality of joy that emerges. And joy is the infallible sign of God. I love this picture. All of you understand, this is the way Jesus really looked. Not like all those paintings at the Louvre or the Vatican where he's really dour, right? He was a person of joy, glad tidings. People were attracted to him because he was joyous. They wanted to be around that quality of being. And that was the real teaching. That was the real teaching. So, this is Hafiz, my poet again. Oh, wondrous creature, by what strange miracle do you so often not smile? So can I get a smile out of everybody? If you really want to be inspired, go to the song playlist Smile by Charlie Chaplin, written during the Second World War. A horrible time. I find as I was driving during those 4 years, I find that my heart is crushed every day by what I read. I don't avoid the news. I actually pray over the news. My heart is crushed by what I read, but it's, as I was telling my brother Phil Calabrese, who's an incredible mathematician, it's an algebraic formula. It's a simultaneous equation because not only am I crushed, but I am blissful. I am hopeful. I know who wins this program. Everybody know who wins this program? Because everybody comes out a winner. So let's get on with it sooner than later. So ask yourself, every day, are you growing every day as a spiritual being of abounding love, joy, and peace? Are you growing every day as a spiritual being of abounding love, joy, and peace? Jerry, we love this passage from 2064. Unfailing compassion and matchless goodwill. Jerry and I share this prayer. My wife and I pray this every morning together. May we be beings of abounding love, matchless goodwill, and unfailing forgiveness. I usually get to about 10:30, 11 on that one. She's my inspiration because she goes all day. So again, what we're saying is there's two operating systems inside of us. One is driven by fear, and I want to tell you that anxiety and anger are just the brother and sister of fear. Anxiety is fear looking forward. Anger is fear looking back. And then love, joy, and peace. Right? Love, joy, and peace. This is the operating system from which we should be driven. And so every day I encourage you, right? 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the evening, take time to be with God. And it's not easy. I've been at it for 52 years. And I can tell you lots of thoughts still fly through my brain. I still get distracted. But when I come back to that sense of God's presence, a smile begins to envelop my being. And so it was a few months ago in March that a group of us went to Taipei. Anybody here go to Taipei? Yeah. And in Taipei, you were there for the launch of the Chinese translation. Yay! Yay, the launch of the Chinese translation. And it was an incredible group of people. Interestingly, many of them are inspired by a course called A Course in Light. And it was inspired by Father Melchizedek in the city of Chicago. So they're taken to the Urantia book like a fish to a fly, right? They're just loving the Urantia book. But I'll tell you, the highlight of the whole trip was when I was leaving. We've all been to airports. I'm standing in line. It's United Airlines. We're going to San Francisco. And I'm standing there, and I'm just feeling good because it was really a wonderful gathering of souls. I'm feeling good, and I'm looking around and smiling. And this little Asian kid at the front of the line, he turns around, he looks at me, and he runs over. And he wraps his arms around my legs, and he says, "Grandpa!" He could have knocked me over with a feather. I turned around. I teach Chinese philosophy. I turned around to the people behind me, and I said, "Lao Tzu, Lao Tzu." Lao Tzu means old boy, old boy. So we can operate from that other operating system. That's the great news. But we cannot do it unless we experience a quality of love. We can rearrange our neural network. I have a friend, Rick Hansen, who's written a book called Buddha's Brain, which I highly recommend. And it says that the neural pathways that fire together wire together. So if you're operating on fear, anger, and anxiety, guess what? You're wiring on fear, anxiety, and anger. And I, as a CPA, I had many clients who were wired for anger. And they managed their systems based on anger and fear. But we can heal the trauma, we can transform. But our desire must be clear. Our desire must be clear. And so I tell you a story. Give me a 5-10 minute warning, Tim. Was that 5 or 10 minutes ago? Okay. Well, I'm going to tell you a story. 1972 was a big year for me. I got the Urantia book, met my wife, I learned transcendental meditation, and in the summer of '72, I got a message that my buddy Lee Benjamin was on patrol in Vietnam, walking down a dirt path, and 3 children with hand grenades in both hands approached his battalion, and at the end of it, everybody in the battalion was dead. The children lay in their blood, and my friend Lee's leg was blown off. And so I was putting in fire alarm systems that summer, and I went to my room. My aunt and uncle, it was their home. They'd gone to the beach. I was the only one there. Turned off the light, and I just started crying. And then I said, if there's somebody here I need to know, and I need to know now. In that moment, those tears of despair became tears of joy. I was lit up. There was fire that filled my whole being, the fire of love. And I knew in that moment that the very fabric of reality is unconditional love. And nobody could ever take that away from me. That is my milestone moment, and that I wish for each and every one of you. If you haven't had that moment, the beginning of the journey is the experience, not the belief, but the experience of unconditional love. And if you haven't felt that, I ask you every day to pray for an augmentation of a new revelation of unconditional love. And so that translates into her, my dear wife, who is my inspiration. I've known her for 57 years. She was 14, I was 15. Does that add up? I don't know. I really don't care, because she's my love life. And she's my motivation. We're at our synagogue here, Congregation Ner Tamid, and she's receiving the Tikkun Olam Award. Leela, what does Tikkun Olam mean? Heal the world. And so my wife, from a very early age, had no access to medical care. My wife's father was in jail. My wife's mother was alcoholic. She had a pretty high A score. And she said, one day I'm going to open up a clinic. And today, Volunteers in Medicine, vmsn.org, we saw 8,000 people last year. We gave away over $3 million in medicine, over $1 million in free diagnostics. We did over 1,000 dental procedures. And we opened up this year the Institute for Spirituality and Health, recognizing that spirituality is a part of healthcare. So you almost got your MBA. Dave, you've already got it, but do you have it? You got your JD, right? That lovely lady next to you? No, well, you're going to get it today. Tell Ralph and Betty you're getting your MBA. So the A is attitude. And I want to suggest to you that there were 8 attitudes, and you all know these. Back in 1972, the other great thing that happened, or 73 I think it was, I met a fellow named Clyde Bedell. Where's Sally? Grandpa. No, she's right there. Grandpa. And Clyde and I would talk about our Florences, but the thing that Clyde really impressed upon me is try as much as you can, as often as you can, to read paper 140. He said paper 140 is the transitional paper because it gives us what I call the Eightfold Path of Jesus. There's an Eightfold Path in Buddhism. There's an Eightfold Path that Jesus has given us. And this is the path. And it's a very logical path. One beatitude leads to the next, leads to the next. So without humility, there's no love. And when there's love, you recognize your own limitations. Oh, that other great philosopher, Mike. You've heard of this fellow, Clint Eastwood? Man's got to know his limitations, right? Great line. We all have, how many of you have limitations? How many of you have severe limitations? And when we recognize that, there's a quality of emptiness, and we get hungry, and we get thirsty for something more. And in Las Vegas, we give you something more, but it's all Maya. It's all an illusion. But if you ask in sincerity, as I did that summer in 1972, and as we've done every day since, every day there's a new revelation of love. And out of those 2 beatitudes comes happy are the meek. Because how many of you have ever been impatient with another person? How many of you quite frequently get impatient with other people? Bless you, Leela. Me too. So the meek are patient and they're forbearing. They're kind. And one of my inspirations, Aldous Huxley, who wrote 1984, I always thought 1984, that's so far out, I'll never see it. Right, Dave? But we've way past it, right? He said in his final book, he said, you know, after a lifetime of scholarship and education and learning, he said, I suppose the only real advice I can give you is to try to be a little kinder. And when that emerges, then there comes a quality of purity. And this is the quality of purity that we see in the life of Jesus, in the being of Jesus. And when we see that, we know that there's possibility for us. And so we aspire to purity in heart because we shall see God. And how many of you see God? I saw him this morning in a hummingbird. I saw him in a garden. I saw him in some fountains. I see him in all of you. Thomas Merton said, I suppose the real problem would be if we really saw the astonishing light of each person's being, we'd fall down and worship each other. And so these are the inner attitudes, and I want to encourage you to find a practice associated with each one of those inner attitudes. So worship is connected to humility. Meekness, welcoming, acknowledging that I'm impatient, but welcoming whatever frustrations you have and owning them, recognizing this is me, this isn't you. And then the outer attitudes. And I spent a lot of time, Tom, thinking about these while I was driving around, as I know you think about these things a lot. That if we can't mourn the Palestinian child and the Israeli teenager, then there's something wrong with us. If we can't mourn the Sudanese family that's just lost their home and has lost members in their family. If we can't mourn every being on this planet, if we can't mourn the greatest extinction of species ever on this planet, in the Permian it was 95% of all species. Now we're in the largest extinction. Anybody want to guess what the difference between then and now is? Jeff's going, I know. What's the difference, Jeff? We caused it. We're causing the largest extinction of species on the planet. So, let's get our act together. So can we mourn the extinction of species? Can we mourn the death of everyone? Can we mourn the person down the street? Can we mourn Tom's loss of his voice and at the same time celebrate all the silver lining that he experienced? So in order to get to being compassionate, you have to learn how to mourn. In order to get to be a peacemaker, you have to be compassionate. And here's the $64 question. Where does compassion begin? Right, Janet? It begins with me. Self-compassion. I've got to heal and transform. I've got to become a new spiritual being. Oh, and that takes you to the cream pie. That's the last one. We all get a cream pie as we do this. When Mo and I became members of the Urantia Foundation, we got a lot of cream pies in the face. But I got the best advice from my sister, Marilyn. She said, Gard, you're stepping into a new culture. Cream pie actually tastes pretty good if you start licking it. And I did, and it is. So again, how humble, how curious, how patient, how pure in intention are you? Am I? How happy are you? Am I? Can I mourn the loss of everyone and anyone? Can I be truly compassionate toward everyone? Do I walk the path of the peacemaker? At the very least, just smiling everywhere you go. And when you're on that Zoom thing, look around. Look how many people are not smiling on that Zoom. And then smile. And see what happens. And am I spiritually resilient? So this is how Jesus taught. This is how it happened for him and how it can happen for us. And he invites each of us to a divine way of being. And I want to thank you, each and every one of you, for being in the wagon train. God bless you. Oh, I almost forgot. I can't conclude without a word from Myrtle. This is from Myrtle Fillmore. Now, because of God's great understanding love, which Jesus Christ has helped us to comprehend and realize, we are beginning to catch glimpses of what the Father is and what he has done for us, and what we are in truth. We are beginning to learn that life is our gift from our Father, a gift that is never withdrawn, never lessened, never limited by the giver. We are beginning to enjoy this gift and to yearn to know how to make right use of it so that we may have the fullness of joy and the blessings in it. We are starting to discover that we can actually do the splendid things we were created to do and came into this world to do. This realization should send a glow of warmth and happiness through your own being. Thank you, Myrtle.